Section 1 of Modern Magic. Modern Magic, a Practical Treatise on the Art of Conjuring, by Professor Louis Hoffman. Introduction. Considering the great antiquity and the unfading popularity of the magic art, it seems at first sight a matter of wonder that its literature should be so extremely scanty. In England, in particular, this is the case. Until within the last few years, it would have been difficult to name a single book worth reading upon this subject. The whole literature of the art consisting of single chapters in books written for the amusement of youth, which were chiefly remarkable for the unanimity with which each copied without acknowledgment from its predecessors, and handbooks sold at the entertainments of various public performers, who took care not to reveal therein any trick which they deemed worthy of performance by themselves. Upon a little consideration, however, the scarcity of treatises on white magic is easily accounted for. The more important secrets of the art have been known but to few, and those few have jealously guarded them, knowing that the more closely they concealed the clue to their mysteries, the more would those mysteries be valued. Indeed, the more noted conjurers of 50 years ago strove to keep the secret of their best tricks, not only from the outside world, but from their confrères. At the present day, the secrets of the art are not so well kept, and there is hardly a trick performed upon the stage which the amateur may not, at a sufficient expenditure of shillings or guineas, procure at the conjuring depots. There being, therefore, no longer the same strict secrecy, the literature of magic has improved a little, though it leaves much to be desired. The general ambition of compilers seems to be to produce books containing nominally some fabulous number of tricks. In order to do this, they occupy 2/3 of their space with chemical and arithmetical recreations, and as a necessary result, the portion devoted to conjuring tricks, properly so called, is treated so briefly and scantily as to be practically useless. There is a vast difference between telling how a trick is done and teaching how to do it. The existing treatises, with few exceptions, do the former only. The intention of the present work is to do the latter also, to teach sleight of hand generally, as well as particular tricks, and to conduct the neophyte from the very ABC of the magic art gradually up to those marvels which are exhibited on the public stage. The student may rest assured that, if he will diligently follow the instructions here given, he will be able in due time not merely to astonish his friends extempore with a borrowed coin or a pack of cards, but to roll 2 rabbits into one, compel chosen cards to rise spontaneously from the pack, produce lighted lanterns from empty hats, and bowls of goldfish from empty pocket-handkerchiefs. In a word, to execute all those wonders which he has hitherto deemed the exclusive property of the public performer. There are, of course, different degrees of natural aptitude. Non cuivis hominum contigit adire Corinthum. It is not everyone that can be a Robert Houdin or a Boutier, but given the usual number of fingers and thumbs, fair intelligence, and a sufficiency of perseverance, any one who will may become at least a tolerable conjurer. Be it remembered that we especially stipulate for perseverance. A wizard is not to be made in a day, and he who would attain excellence must be content to proceed as he would with music, drawing, or any other accomplishment, viz., begin at the beginning, and practice diligently until he attains the coveted dexterity. The student need not, however, wait the termination of the somewhat formidable course of study we have indicated, before he begins to astonish his friends. On the contrary, there are numerous tricks requiring very little manual dexterity, which are yet, if neatly performed, brilliant in effect. These simpler tricks, for which we shall give full instructions, will supply the beginner, even at the outset, with a fair program, which he may, from time to time, enlarge as he feels able to undertake more elaborate illusions. The first rule to be borne in mind by the aspirant is this: never tell your audience beforehand what you are going to do. If you do so, you at once give their vigilance the direction which it is most necessary to avoid, and increase tenfold the chances of detection. We will give an illustration. There is a very good trick, which will be described at length hereafter, in which the performer, after borrowing a handkerchief, gives it to someone to hold. When it is returned, it proves to be torn into small pieces. It is again handed to the holder, who is instructed, in order to restore it, to rub it in a particular manner, but when again unfolded, it is found in a long strip. These effects are produced by successive adroit substitutions, and the whole magic of the trick consists in the concealment of the particular moment at which each substitution is effected. Now, if you were to announce to the audience beforehand that you were about to cause the handkerchief to appear in several pieces, or in a long strip, they would at once conjecture that the trick depended on an exchange, and their whole vigilance being directed to discover the moment of that exchange, you would find it all but impossible to perform the trick without detection. If, on the other hand, you merely roll up the handkerchief and ask someone to hold it, the audience, not knowing what you are about to do, have no reason to suspect that you have handed him a substitute, and when the transformation is exhibited, the opportunity of detection will have already passed away. It follows, as a practical consequence of this first rule, that you should never perform the same trick twice on the same evening. The best trick loses half its effect on repetition, but besides this, the audience know precisely what is coming, and have all their faculties directed to find out at what point you cheated their eyes on the first occasion. It is sometimes hard to resist an encore, but a little tact will get you out of the difficulty, especially if you have studied, as every conjurer should do, the variation and combination of tricks. There are a score of different ways of vanishing a given article, and as many of reproducing it, and either one of the first may be used in conjunction with either of the second. Thus, by varying either the beginning or the end, you make the trick to some extent a new one. The power of doing this readily is very useful, and among other advantages will enable you to meet an encore by performing some other trick having some element of similarity to that which you have just completed, but terminating in a different and therefore unexpected manner. The student must cultivate from the outset the art of talking, and especially the power of using his eyes and his tongue independently of the movement of his hands. To do this, it will be necessary to prepare beforehand not only what he intends to do, but what he intends to say, and to rehearse frequently and carefully even the simplest trick before attempting it in public. It is surprising how many little difficulties are discovered on first attempting to carry into effect even the clearest written directions, and nothing but practice will overcome these difficulties. The novice may be encouraged by assuming, as he safely may, that the most finished of popular performers was once as awkward as himself, and were he to attempt any unfamiliar feat, would probably be as awkward still. Before proceeding to the practice of the magic art, it will be well to give a short description of 2 or 3 appliances, which are of such constant use that they may be said to form the primary stock in trade of every conjurer. These are a short wand, a specially adapted table, and certain secret pockets in the magician's dress. There are numerous other appliances of very general use, which will be explained in due course, but those we have named are so indispensable that we could hardly complete the description of half a dozen tricks of any pretension without a reference to one or other of them. First in order comes the magic wand. This is a light rod of 12 to 15 inches in length and about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. It may be of any material, and decorated in any manner which the fancy of the owner may dictate. To the uninitiated, its use may appear a mere affectation, but such is by no means the case. Apart from the prestige derived from the traditional properties of the wand, and its use by the wizards of all ages, it affords a plausible pretext for many necessary movements, which would otherwise appear awkward and unnatural, and would thereby arouse the vigilance of the audience at possibly the most critical period of the trick. Thus, if the performer desires to hold anything concealed in his hand, by holding the wand in the same hand he is able to keep it closed without exciting suspicion. If it is necessary, as frequently happens, to turn his back upon the audience for an instant, the momentary turn to the table in order to take up or lay down the wand affords the required opportunity. We most strongly advise the would-be magician to cultivate from the outset the habitual use of the wand, even where its employment is not absolutely necessary for the purpose of the trick. Its use is in strict accordance with the character he professes to fill, and the dainty touch of the wand, for the supposed purpose of operating a magical transformation, assists materially in leading the audience to believe that such transformation did actually take place at that particular moment, instead of having been, as is really the case, secretly effected at an earlier period. The next appliance to which we must draw the student's attention is the magician's table. There are plenty of good minor tricks which may be performed anywhere, and with little or no previous preparation. But as soon as the student has outgrown these humbler feats, and aspires to amuse his friends or the public with a prearranged séance, his first necessity will be a proper table. We do not now refer to the elaborate combination of traps, pistons, etc., which is used for stage performances. This will be duly described in its proper place. The table necessary for an average drawing-room exhibition differs from an ordinary table in 2 points only: its height, which should be 6 or 8 inches greater than that of an ordinary table, and the addition of a hidden shelf or ledge at the back. Its form and dimensions are very much a matter of fancy and convenience. For most purposes nothing is better than a plain oblong deal table. It should have turned legs of some harder wood, stained and polished, and these, if it is desired to make the table portable, should be screwed into the 4 corners, so as to be readily taken off and put on again as may be required. In length the table may be 3 to 4 feet, and in breadth 18 inches to 2 feet. 3 feet by 20 inches is a very convenient size. At the back should be placed, about 6 inches below the level of the top of the table, a projecting shelf, 6 to 8 inches in width, and extending nearly from end to end. This shelf, which is technically known as the servante, should be covered with thick woolen cloth, in order to deaden the sound of any object falling on it. Some performers have a rim about ½ an inch high running along the outer edge of this shelf, while others, in place of the shelf, use a wooden tray fixed in the same position and 1 to 2 inches in depth. The manner of fixing the shelf is optional. In some tables it is made to slide in and out like a drawer, in others to fold up on hinges against the back of the table, or itself to form the back. This latter is the most convenient mode, as the opening made by the flap, when let down, gives access to the interior of the table, which forms a convenient receptacle for necessary articles. In this case, the upper part of the table is made box fashion, in other words, is bottomed throughout with wood on a level with the hinges of the servante, giving an enclosed space under the whole extent of the table. Over the table should be thrown an ordinary cloth table cover, of such a size as to hang down about 10 or 15 inches at the front and sides, but not more than an inch or so on the side away from the audience. To prevent its slipping, the cloth may be fastened on this side with a couple of drawing pins. Where traps are used, and the cloth is therefore to be cut, the hanging cloth is dispensed with, and the table is covered with cloth glued on the top, with a margin round it, after the fashion of a card table, and this may be done, if preferred, even where the table is without mechanism. The adoption of this plan allows of the introduction of gold mouldings, or other ornamentation, on the front and sides. In our own opinion, unless there is some special reason to the contrary in the mechanical arrangements of the table, the plain hanging cover is preferable, as being least suggestive of apparatus or preparation. The precise height of the table is best determined by the stature of the performer. The servante, or hidden shelf, should be just so high from the ground as to be level with the knuckles of the performer as his arm hangs by his side, and the top of the table should, as already stated, be about 6 inches higher than this. It will be found that this height will enable the performer secretly to take up or lay down any article thereon without stooping or bending the arm, either of which movements would suggest to the spectators that his hand was occupied in some manner behind the table. One of the first tasks of the novice should be to acquire the power of readily picking up or laying down any article on the servante, without making any corresponding movement of the body, and especially without looking down at his hands. If the performer is uncertain as to the precise whereabouts of a given article, he must ascertain it by a quick glance as he approaches his table, and not after he has placed himself behind it. From this moment he must not again look down, as if once the audience suspect that he has a secret receptacle behind his table, half the magic of his tricks is thenceforth destroyed. An oblong box, 12 or 14 inches in length by 3 in depth, well padded with wadding, and placed on the servante, will be found very useful in getting rid of small articles, such as coin, oranges, etc., as such articles may be dropped into the box without causing any sound, and therefore without attracting attention. In default of a table regularly made for the purpose, the amateur may, with little difficulty, adapt an ordinary table for use as a makeshift. A common library or kitchen table having a drawer on one side, and raised on 4 bricks or blocks of wood to the requisite height, will answer the purpose very fairly. The table must be covered with a cloth, and should have the drawer pulled out about 6 inches, the drawer side being, of course, away from the audience, to form the servante. A still better extempore conjuring table may be manufactured in a few minutes with the aid of a good-sized folding bagatelle board. Place the shut-up board on a card or writing table, which should be 6 or 8 inches shorter than the board, in such manner that there may be left behind it, on the side which is intended to be farthest from the audience, a strip of table 6 or 7 inches in width. This will form the servante. Throw an ordinary cloth table cover over the bagatelle board, letting it hang down a foot or 18 inches in front, and tucking its opposite edge under the hinder edge of the board, whose weight will prevent it from slipping. If the cloth is too large, it must be folded accordingly before placing it on the table. The table thus extemporized will be of a convenient height, and will answer very fairly for the purposes of an ordinary drawing-room performance. The conjurer, however, may be called upon to give a sample of his art when neither regular nor extemporized table is available, and even where he is sufficiently provided in this respect, he will frequently have occasion to produce or get rid of a given article without retiring behind his table to do so. The wizards of a century ago met this necessity by wearing openly in front of them a sort of bag or apron, called in the parlance of the French conjurers a gibeciere, from its supposed resemblance to a game bag. This was used not only to carry the cups and balls, and other minor paraphernalia of the art, but for the purpose of procuring, exchanging, or getting rid of any small article at the pleasure of the performer. In fact, this bag supplied the place of the servante, which was not then known. It is hardly necessary to observe that the gibeciere has been long since disused, and a performer who should now appear in a pocketed apron would run much risk of being taken for a hairdresser. Although, however, the gibeciere is not now, as of old, worn openly, the conjurer of the present day is provided with certain secret substitutes, to explain which it is necessary to say a few words as to the magician's dress. It is not very many years since the orthodox dress of the conjurer was a long and flowing robe, embroidered more or less with hieroglyphic characters, and giving ample space for the concealment of any reasonable-sized article, say from a warming-pan downwards. The very last specimen of such a garment, to the best of our belief, is or was worn by the magician attached to the Crystal Palace. We do not know whether he is compelled by the regulations of the establishment to wear such a robe, but if so, it ought to be liberally considered in his salary. The costume de rigueur of the magician of the present day is ordinary evening dress. The effect of the feats performed is greatly heightened by the close fit and comparative scantiness of such a costume, which appears to allow no space for secret pockets or other place of concealment. In reality, however, the magician is provided with 2 special pockets, known as profonde, placed in the tails of his dress coat. Each is from 4 to 6 inches in depth and 7 in width, and the opening, which is across the inside of the coat tail, slanting slightly downwards from the center to the side, is, like the servante, so placed as to be just level with the knuckles of the performer, as his hand hangs by his side. He can thus, by the mere action of dropping either hand to his side, let fall any article instantly into the profonde on that side, or take anything from thence in like manner. The action is so natural that it may be used under the very eyes of the audience at very small risk of their observing it, and if the performer at the same moment slightly turns his other side to the spectators, he may be perfectly secure from detection. Some performers have also a couple of pochettes, small pockets, made in the trousers, one behind each thigh. These are generally used for purposes of production only, the profonde being still employed for getting rid of any article, which indeed is their primary purpose, for they were originally made too deep, profonde, whence their name, to get articles easily out of them. Many professors, in addition to the pockets above mentioned, have also a spacious pocket, opening perpendicularly inside the breast of the coat, under each arm, for the purpose of what is called loading, in other words, bringing a rabbit or other article into a hat, etc. Other pockets may be added, as the fancy or invention of the performer may dictate, but the above are those generally used. It will also be found a great convenience to have an elastic band, about an inch in width, stitched around the lower edge of the waistcoat on the inside. When the waistcoat is in wear, the band makes it press tightly round the waist, and any object of moderate size, a card, or pack of cards, a handkerchief, etc., may be slipped under it without the least risk of falling. Used in conjunction with the pockets before described, this elastic waistband offers a means of instantaneously effecting changes of articles too large to be palmed with safety, one hand dropping the genuine article into the profonde on that side, while the other draws the prepared substitute from under the waistband, a very slight turn of the body, towards the table, or otherwise, sufficing to cover the movement. With these few preliminary observations, we proceed to the practice of the art, commencing with the ever-popular class of illusions performed by the aid of playing cards. End of Section 1.
Section 2 of Modern Magic. Recording by Little T. Modern Magic. A Practical Treatise on the Art of Conjuring by Professor Louis Hoffman. General Principles of Sleight of Hand applicable to Card Tricks. Part 1. Among the various branches of the conjurer's art, none will better repay the labor of the student, whether artist or amateur, than the magic of cards. It has the special advantage of being, in a great measure, independent of time and place. The materials for half its mysteries are procurable at 5 minutes' notice in every home circle, and even in the case of those tricks for which specially prepared cards, etc., are requisite, the necessary appliances cost little and are easily portable. Two virtues not too common in magical apparatus. Further, the majority of card tricks are dependent mainly on personal address and dexterity, and as such, will always be highly esteemed by connoisseurs in the art. Before very large audiences, indeed, the spectators being at a distance from the performer, much of the effect of a card trick is lost, which is probably the reason that, of late years, tricks of this class, with a few exceptions, have been rather neglected by professors, and that many feats which in the times of Conus and Comet were numbered among the sensations of the day are now almost entirely forgotten. We shall endeavor, in the following pages, after explaining the principles of sleight of hand applicable to cards, and giving instructions for some of the best of the more commonplace feats, to revive the recollection and, we hope, the practice of some of these brilliant performances. The cards. The adept in sleight of hand should accustom himself to the use of every description of cards, as frequently none but the ordinary full-sized playing cards may be available. Where, however, the choice is open to him, he should use, in the actual performance of tricks, cards of a smaller and thinner make. The common French cards answer the purpose very well. Among cards of English make, some of the best for the purpose are the small cards of the French pattern made by De la Rue and Company for use in France, and those known as the Tankerville cards, both imported by Peck and Snyder, 124 Nassau Street, New York City, which are thin, well made, and of small size, but of the English pattern. In any case, it is well to use only the Pouquet pack of 32 cards, the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s being removed, the complete whist pack being inconveniently bulky for sleight-of-hand purposes. To make the pass, sauter le coup. The effect of this sleight, which is the very backbone of card conjuring, is to reverse the respective positions of the top and bottom halves of the pack. That is, to make those cards which are first formed the lower half of the pack come uppermost, when those cards which are first formed the upper half will of course be undermost. It is used by card shoppers, immediately after the cards have been cut, to replace them in the position which they occupied before the cut, and from this circumstance derives its French name. There are various methods of producing this effect, some requiring the use of both hands, some of one hand only. These we shall describe in due order. First method, with both hands. Hold the pack in the left hand lengthwise, with the face downwards, as if about to deal at any game. In this position, the thumb will naturally be on the left side of the pack, and the forefingers on the other. Insert the top joint of the little finger immediately above those cards which are to be brought to the top of the pack, and which are now undermost, and let the remaining 3 fingers close naturally on the remaining cards, which are now uppermost. See Figure 1. In this position, you will find that the uppermost part of the pack is held between the little finger, which is underneath, and the remaining fingers, which are upon it. Now, advance the right hand and cover the pack with it. Grasp the lower portion of the pack lengthwise between the second finger at the upper and the thumb at the lower end, the left thumb lying slightly bent across the pack. Press the inner edge of the lower packet into the fork of the left thumb, so that the 2 packets will be as shown in Figure 2. Next, draw away the upper packet by slightly extending the fingers of the left hand, at the same time lifting up the other edge of the lower packet, till the edge of the 2 packets just clear each other. See Figure 3. When by the mere act of closing the left hand, they will be brought together as at first, save that they will have changed places. Do this at first very slowly, aiming only at neatness and noiselessness of execution. At the outset, the task will be found somewhat difficult, but gradually the hands will be found to acquire a sort of sympathetic action. The different movements which we have above described will melt, as it were, into one, and the 2 packets will change places with such lightness and rapidity that they will seem to actually pass through each other. A slight momentary depression and elevation of the hands, apparently a mere careless gesture, in the act of making the pass, will completely cover the transposition of the cards, which in the hands of an adept is invisible, even to the most watchful spectator. The above is the most orthodox and the most perfect method of making the pass, and if the student be proficient in this, he need trouble himself very little about the remaining methods, which are inserted chiefly for the sake of completeness, being very inferior in all respects. Whenever in the course of this book the student is directed to make the pass, this first method will be considered to be referred to unless otherwise specially expressed. Before quitting the subject of this method, we should mention that it is sometimes necessary to cause the 2 halves of the pack to kiss, that is to bring them face to face. This is effected by turning the original upper packet face upwards in the act of bringing the transposed packets together. When the pass in the ordinary form is fairly mastered, this slight variation will occasion no additional difficulty. In this, as in all other branches of prestidigitation, the student will find it of the greatest possible advantage to practice before looking-glass. By this means, better than any other, he will be enabled to judge how far his movements succeed in deceiving the eyes of a spectator. One caution may here be given with advantage. The student of legerdemain must learn to perform all necessary movements without looking at his hands, unless for some special reason he desires the spectators to look at them also. In every case, wherever the performer desires his audience to look, his own eyes must take that particular direction, and wherever he desires his audience not to look, he himself must carefully abstain from looking. Let us suppose, for instance, that a person has drawn a card and has replaced it in the middle of the pack. The performer desires to bring it to the top, for which purpose it is necessary to introduce the little finger above the card in question, and to make the pass, as above described. When the card is replaced in the pack, the eyes of the drawer are naturally directed towards it, and if the performer were himself to look downward at the cards, it would multiply tenfold the chance of detection. He should pause for a moment, and looking full at the person who drew the card, ask, "You are certain that you will know that card again?" or make any similar observation. As he speaks, a natural impulse will draw the eyes of the audience to his own face, and he may then make the pass without the slight necessary movement attracting the least attention. It is hard to believe, until tested by actual experience, what apparently obvious movements may be executed under the very noses of an audience, if only their attention is diverted at the right moment by a dexterous use of the eye and voice of the operator. Second method, with both hands. Holding the pack in the left hand, as directed for the first method, grasp as before the lower portion of the pack lengthways between the second finger at the upper end and the thumb at the lower end. Move the left thumb, which now takes no part in the operation, a little below the pack to be out of the way. Then slide the lower half of the pack a little to the left, and the upper half to the right till they just clear each other. See Figure 4. When you will be enabled to place what was originally the upper half undermost, and vice versa. This is the theory of the process, but in practice the necessary motions are not nearly so distinct. As you grow more and more expert, the necessary movement from right to left should become gradually smaller and smaller, until at last it is almost imperceptible. You must study to reduce this movement to the very minimum, and in order to do this, endeavor, after you have once seen clearly what it is you have to do, to keep the hands together as much as possible. Let the edge of the palm of the right hand rest gently but firmly on the first 3 fingers of the left hand, and let the contact thus made form a kind of hinge or fulcrum for the movement of the hands. When you become expert, you will find that the mere outward movement of the 2 hands upon this imaginary hinge, the cards being held lightly and allowed to accommodate themselves to the movement, is sufficient to produce the effect. We have above recommended you to keep the hands together as much as possible, but there are circumstances under which an ostentatious separation of the hands is equally effective. Thus, holding the cards as above directed, you may make the pass by apparently merely cutting the cards, lifting, in truth, the under instead of the upper half, the latter making way, by a slight and momentary extension of the left hand, to allow it to pass. You may also, when holding the cards as just cut, that is half the pack in each hand, make the pass in the act of bringing them together. To do this, you should hold the right hand packet in such manner that the thumb and second finger may project a full inch beyond the face of the cards. At the moment of bringing the two packets together, which should be done with a sidelong motion of the right hand from right to left, this thumb and finger grip the other packet and slide it out towards the left shoulder, leaving what was originally the right hand packet in the left hand. If this is done neatly, the movement is so subtle that the keenest eye cannot detect that the two packets have changed hands. Having effected the change, you may take your own time as to placing the new uppermost packet on the other. The circumstances of each trick will indicate the cases in which it may be desirable to adapt either of these variations. Third method, with both hands. This is very similar to the first method, but much less neat. Take the cards, as in the former case, face downwards in the left hand, but instead of the little finger, insert the second and third fingers immediately above those cards which are to be brought to the top of the pack, and draw the first and fourth fingers below the pack. See Figure 5. In this position, the lower half of the pack is held as in a forceps between the second and third and the first and fourth fingers. Now cover the pack with the right hand as directed for making the pass by the first method, but in this instance grasp therewith between the first and second fingers at top and the thumb at bottom the upper half of the pack. Raise this upper half slightly to allow room for the movement of the lower half, and at the same moment slightly extend the fingers of the left hand. See Figure 6. This will make the lower packet describe a quarter of a circle. As soon as it is clear of the upper packet, by reversing the motion, that is, closing the fingers of the left hand and at the same time lowering the right hand, the two halves of the pack will be again brought together, but that half which was originally undermost will now be uppermost. The movement will be understood more clearly on an inspection of the diagrams A and B, Figure 6. A representing an in-view of the two portions of the pack in their original position, and B of the same in their transposed position, the original lower portion being in each case indicated by the darker shade. Fourth method, with the left hand. This is almost the same as the method last described, save that the left hand only is used. The upper packet, instead of being held in the right hand, is in this case clipped between the ball of the left thumb and the point where the thumb joins the hand. In other respects, the movement is the same. Fifth method, with the left hand. Take the cards in the left hand as before. Insert the third finger above the cards which are to be brought to the top, and which now form the lower half of the pack, and close the remaining three fingers on the top of the pack. See Figure 1, but suppose the third finger inserted in place of the fourth. Now extend the fingers which will make the upper part of the pack describe a semicircle. See Figure 7, and at the same moment press downward with the thumb the left top corner of the lower packet. This will tilt up the opposite end of the lower packet and give room, as you again close the fingers, for the upper packet to pass into the lower place. See Figure 8. To bring the original upper packet, that is, the one with the 6 of hearts at the bottom, from the position indicated in Figure 7 to that which it occupies in Figure 8, it is pressed slightly forward with the middle finger, and is thereby made to perform a semi-revolution, the third finger acting as pivot. The packet is by this means turned over endways, that is, the end of the packet which was originally nearest to the performer is now farthest from him, and vice versa. The movement is by no means easy to describe, but if followed step by step with the cards, will be readily understood. This method of making the pass has a peculiarity, which renders it especially useful in certain cases. When the upper half of the pack describes a semicircle, as above mentioned, the bottom card of such half is in full view of the performer, though the spectators see only the back of the cards. The performer thus becomes acquainted, unknown to his audience, with that card which, after the pass, becomes the bottom card of the pack, which knowledge may occasionally be very useful. The movement of the cards in this mode of making the pass is very noticeable, but the circular sweep taken by the upper packet so confuses the eye that the audience must be extremely keen-sighted to detect the effect of the movement, which, if neatly executed, has the appearance of a mere flourish. A quick sweep of the arm from left to right as the pass is made will greatly assist in covering the transposition of the cards. Some perform the pass last described without causing the upper packet to make the semi-revolution above mentioned. The first finger in this case does not participate in the operation, but is left extended beyond the upper end of the pack. Sixth method, with either hand. Take the pack in either hand, as if you were about to stand it on end on the table, the backs of the cards being next to the palm. Insert the third finger between the two halves of the pack, and draw the second and fourth fingers behind the pack. In this position, the uppermost half of the pack is held between the third finger and the second and fourth fingers. Clip the lower or front half of the pack at its two top corners between the thumb and the first finger. See Figure 9. Now extend the second, third, and fourth fingers, which will carry with them the upper half of the pack. As soon as it is clear of the lower half, again close the fingers, thereby bringing the upper packet to the bottom. See Figure 10. This mode of making the pass may be employed as you place the pack on the table, the movement for that purpose serving to cover that by which the cards are transposed. If no table is at hand, a quick movement of the hand and arm from right to left at the moment when the pass is made will be found to answer equally well. Seventh method, with the right hand. This is a mere makeshift for the pass proper, though its effect is the same. It is performed in picking up the cards from the table after they have been cut and left, as is usual, in two heaps. The performer picks up, as in the ordinary course, the bottom half of the pack, which should properly be placed uppermost after the cut. But, instead of picking them up in the usual way, he picks them up with the second, third, and fourth fingers under, and the first finger above the cards. In placing them apparently upon the upper heap, he tilts up the right hand edge of that heap with the tip of the first finger, and with the remaining fingers slides the heap he already holds underneath. See Figure 11, so that the cards are again precisely as they were before the cut. This sham mode of making the pass is rarely used by conjurers, but is said to be frequently employed by card choppers. To force a card. By this phrase is signified the compelling a person to draw such card as you desire, though he is apparently allowed absolute freedom of choice. Your first step is to get sight of the bottom card, or, if you want to force a predetermined card, to get that card to the bottom. Having done this, take the pack in the left hand and insert the little finger halfway down, in readiness to make the pass. Make the pass by the first method, but before uniting the two halves of the pack in their new position, again slip the little finger of the left hand between them. The two halves will now be united at the end which is towards the spectators, but divided by the little finger at the end nearest to yourself, and the original bottom card, which is the one you desire to force, is now the bottom of the top heap, resting on the little finger. Using both hands, with the thumbs above and the fingers below the pack, spread out the cards fan-wise from left to right, at the same time offering them to a person who is to draw, and requesting him to select a card. Keep the little finger of the left hand still on the face of the card to be chosen, or you may now use, if more convenient, the same finger of the right hand, both being underneath the cards. As the person advances his hand to draw, move the cards onward with the thumb so that the particular card shall reach his fingers just at the moment when he closes them in order to draw. And if you have followed these directions properly, it is 10 to 1 that he will draw the card you wish. It may possibly be imagined that forcing is a very difficult matter and requires an extraordinary degree of dexterity, but this is by no means the case. The principal thing against which a beginner must guard is a tendency to offer the particular card a little too soon. When the cards are first presented to the drawer, the pack should be barely spread at all, and the card in question should be 10 or 15 cards off. The momentary hesitation of the drawer in making his choice will give time. By moving the cards quicker or slower, as may be necessary, to bring that card opposite his fingers at the right moment. Should the performer, however, miscalculate his time, and the card pass the drawer's fingers before the choice is made, he need not be embarrassed. Still keeping the little finger on the card, he should sharply close the cards, and making some remark as to the drawer being difficult to please, or the like, again spread them as before, and offer them for the choice. A moderate degree of practice will make the student so proficient that even a person acquainted with the secret of forcing will have to be very wide awake in order not to take the desired card. You will, however, sometimes find a person, suspecting your design and wishing to embarrass you, suddenly jerk his hand away from the card which he was apparently about to take, and draw another from a different part of the pack. In the great majority of tricks, this is of little consequence, inasmuch as there are numerous ways, which will be hereafter explained, ascertaining what the drawn card was. But there are some illusions which depend upon the drawer taking a card similar in suit and number to one already prepared elsewhere for the purpose of the trick. In this case, it is, of course, absolutely necessary that the card drawn should be the right one, and as even the most accomplished performer cannot always be certain of forcing a single card, another expedient must be used in order to ensure success. This is made absolutely certain by the use of what is called a forcing pack, that is, a pack in which all the cards are alike. Thus, if the knave of hearts is the card to be drawn, the whole pack will consist of knaves of hearts, and the drawer may therefore do his utmost to exercise a free choice, but the cards which he draws will certainly be the knave of hearts, and no other. Where more than one card is to be drawn, as for instance in the well-known trick of the raising cards, the pack must consist instead of similar cards throughout, of groups of 2 or more particular cards. Thus 1/3 may be knaves of hearts, 1/3 aces of diamonds, and the remaining third sevens of clubs, the cards of each kind being together. With the aid of such a pack, it will require very little skill to ensure one of each sort being drawn. End of Part 1 of Chapter 2. End of Section 2. Recording by Little T.
Section 3 of Modern Magic. Recording by Lynn Thompson. Modern Magic. A Practical Treatise on the Art of Conjuring, by Professor Louis Hoffman. General Principles of Sleight of Hand applicable to Card Tricks. Part 2. To make a false shuffle. False shuffles are of two kinds, according to the object with which they are made. Those of the first kind are designed simply to keep in view a particular card or cards, the remainder of the pack being really shuffled. The second kind are designed to keep the pack in a pre-arranged order, and are shuffled in appearance only, all the cards being brought back to the same relative positions which they occupied before the shuffle. First method, to keep a particular card or cards in view. Take the pack in the left hand. If the card to be kept in view is not already on the top of the pack, insert the little finger of the left hand immediately above that card, and make the pass in order to bring it to the top. Transfer this card to the right hand, and slide the remaining cards upon it. By little successive parcels of 6 or 8 cards, one above the other, the known card will now be at the bottom. Return the pack to the left hand, slide off 3 or 4 of the top cards into the right hand, and place the remaining cards, by parcels of 6 or 8 as before, alternately above and below these top cards, until you come to the last card, which is the special one, and which you will place above or below as occasion may require. If there are 3 or 4 cards to be kept in view, it makes no difference in the mode of operation, save that you must treat those cards throughout as the single card, and keep them together accordingly. Second method, to keep a particular card in view. Bring the card in question, as before directed, to the top of the pack. Take the pack in the left hand, holding it upright on its side, the edges of the cards resting on the palm, the 4 fingers, which should be slightly moistened, being at the back or top, and the thumb on the face of the pack. Now, with the thumb and middle finger of the right hand, lift out edgeways that portion of the cards which now forms the middle of the pack, and drop them by packets of 5 or 6 at a time upon the face of the cards remaining in the left hand, moving aside the left thumb to allow of their passage. The pressure of the fingers will always keep the top card in place. However, many of the remaining cards you lift out with the right hand, and as you only shuffle onto the face of the pack, however often you repeat the process, this card will still remain at the top. Third method, to retain the whole pack in a pre-arranged order. Take the pack in the left hand, slide off with the left thumb 5 or 6 of the top cards into the right hand, and place the remaining cards by parcels of 5 or 6 at a time, apparently, alternately above and below these first cards, as in the ordinary mode of shuffling. We say apparently, for in reality, although you go through the motion of placing every alternate packet above the cards in the right hand, you do not leave it there, but draw it back again with the thumb onto the top of the cards in the left hand, and then place it by your next movement under the cards in the right hand. The result is that the cards in the left hand, instead of being placed alternately above and below the cards in the right hand, are really all placed below, and in precisely the same order which they occupied at first. Some persons are in the habit of making the genuine shuffle, of which the above is an imitation, from the right hand to the left, instead of from the left hand to the right, as above described. It may be stated, once for all, that wherever it is found more easy by the student to do with the right hand that which he is here instructed to do with the left, and vice versa, there is not the least objection to his doing so, though the mode here indicated is that which, it is believed, will be found most convenient by the generality of persons. Fourth method, to retain the whole pack in a pre-arranged order. Take the upper half of the pack in the right hand, and the lower half in the left, the thumb in each case being above and the fingers below the cards. Place the 2 portions edge to edge, and work in the edges of the cards in the right hand half an inch or so between the edges of those in the left, spreading the cards in the meanwhile to facilitate the introduction, but let the right hand cards project about an inch above the top edges of those in the left hand. If you were to close up the cards in the relative positions they now occupy, they would be really shuffled. To prevent their being so, in fact, as well as in appearance, you clip lengthways between the thumb and second finger of the right hand the cards of the packet on that side, and bend them sharply downwards and outwards. This again disengages them from the other packet, on the top of which you quickly slide them, and press the whole square. Fifth method, to retain the whole pack in a pre-arranged order. Make the pass so as to bring the lower half of the pack uppermost. Take the pack in the right hand, keeping the two portions of the pack separated by the little finger of that hand. Hold the cards face downwards a few inches from the table, and let fall, by 5 or 6 at a time, those cards which now form the lower half of the pack. You should so arrange that these cards form 4 little heaps, falling in order indicated by the accompanying figure. Thus the bottom cards must fall at 1, the next lowest at 2, the next, comprising all that remain of the lower packet, at 3, and the remaining cards, being the whole of the upper part, at 4. Now, with the left hand, quickly place packet 1 on packet 4, and, with the right hand, packet 2 on packet 1, and finally, with the left hand, packet 3 on top of all, when the cards will occupy precisely the same relative positions as at first. The use of the two hands alternately, coupled with the rapidity of the performer, gives to his motions an appearance of carelessness which effectually baffles the spectators, and prevents their suspecting that the heaps are pre-arranged in any determined order. Sixth method. This also retains the cards in their pre-arranged order, with this qualification, that an indefinite number are transferred from the top to the bottom of the pack, the effect being as if the cards had been cut without being shuffled. Holding the cards as directed for the last method, you drop them in 4 heaps as before, first beginning from the left and proceeding straight onwards in regular succession. Now place the first heap on the fourth or right-hand heap, and the second heap on the first heap, finally placing the third heap either above or below the pile thus made. Where it is necessary, after using this shuffle, to bring back the cards to the precise condition in which they were at first, this object may be effected by the use of the bridge hereafter described. To palm a card. Bring the card which you desire to palm, by the pass or otherwise, to the top of the pack. Hold the pack face downwards in the left hand, covering it lengthways with the right. With the left thumb push the top card till it projects about an inch beyond the edge of the pack. With the third finger of the left hand, which is now immediately below the card, press it upwards into the right hand, which should half close over it. You must not mind about bending the card, which will lie curled up against the inside of the hand. You may either let the hand drop negligently to your side, or, still better, take the pack between the fingers and thumbs of the same hand, and offer it to be shuffled. This will give you the opportunity, often very valuable, of seeing what the card in question is. When it becomes necessary to return the card to the pack, the mere motion of taking the pack in the right hand, whether from the left hand or from the table, will effect that object in the most natural manner. If the card retains a curve from its bent position in the hand, you may readily straighten it by ruffling the cards, as described in the next paragraph. If the performer is fortunate enough to have a large hand, a complete pack of cards may be palmed in this manner without difficulty. To ruffle the cards. Hold the pack tightly by the lower end between the fingers and thumbs of the left hand, the thumb being above and the fingers below the cards. Cover the pack lengthways with the right hand, and clip the cards between the fingers and thumb, as if you were about to make the pass by the first method. Keep the thumb unmoved, but draw the fingers smartly upwards, so as to bend the card slightly. The springing of the cards, as they escape one by one from the pressure of the fingers, and again straighten themselves, causes a peculiar sharp sound. The ruffle may also be executed with one hand only. Take the pack between the middle finger at top and the thumb at bottom, the first finger resting in a bent position on the back of the cards. Press strongly with the thumb so as to bend the two ends of the cards smartly outwards, allowing them one by one to escape from the middle finger, and simultaneously straighten the first finger so as to clip the lower end of the cards between that finger and the thumb. The ruffle is a mere flourish, but it is by no means without its value. We have indicated in the last paragraph one of its uses, that is, to straighten a card which has been palmed. Apart from this, there are many tricks in which it is desirable to mislead the spectator as to the particular movement by which, or the point of time at which, a particular effect was produced. This may be effected by a judicious use of the ruffle. Suppose, for instance, that the trick consists in magically bringing a given card to a particular position in the pack, and that the performer has already, without the knowledge of his audience, placed the card in the required position. If, before showing that it is so placed, he ostentatiously ruffles the cards, 9 out of 10 of the audience will be persuaded that this noisy movement is in some way the cause of the transposition, and will be proportionately the less likely to discover the true explanation of the feat. To change a card. Filer la carte. Some of the most brilliant effects in card conjuring are produced by the aid of this sleight, by means of which a card, fairly exhibited, is forthwith apparently transformed to a different one. There are several modes of producing this effect. First method. Hold the pack in the left hand as though about to deal the cards. Hold the card to be changed in the right hand, between the first and second forefingers. The card into which it is to be changed should have been previously placed, secretly of course, on the top of the pack. Push this card a little forward with the left thumb so as to make it project about 3/4 of an inch beyond the remaining cards. Bring the hands close together for an instant, and in that instant place the card held in the right hand under the pack, the second, third, and fourth fingers of the left hand opening to receive it, and the remaining finger making way for it as soon as it reaches the pack. Simultaneously with this movement, the thumb and first finger of the right hand must close upon the card projecting from the top of the pack, and, as the hand separates, carry with them that card in place of the one which the right hand originally held. A half turn of the body to the left or right, a quick downward sweep of the right hand, or any other rapid gesture, will assist in covering the momentary bringing together of the hands. In some cases it is better that the right hand alone should move, the left hand being held stationary. In other cases, the left hand, the one holding the pack, should make the movement, the hand holding the single card being motionless. It will be well to practice both these modes of making the change. The direction in which the performer turns, in order to place the card on his table, or the like, will indicate which is the best mode to use in any given case. Second method. This is a very inferior mode of performing the change, but may be useful as a makeshift while the student is acquiring the greater dexterity required for the former method. Hold the pack upright towards the audience, with the card to be changed at the bottom, and therefore in full view, and the card for which it is to be changed at the top. The pack should be supported by both hands, and the two cards named should project about half an inch to the right beyond the remainder of the pack, the front or bottom card being between the first and second fingers, and the back or top card between the thumb and first finger of the right hand. Call attention to the bottom card. Make a downward sweep with the pack so as to turn the faces of the cards towards the ground, and at the same moment draw off with the right hand the top card, which the audience will imagine to be the one they have just seen at the bottom. Third method. Hold the card to be changed face downwards, between the thumb and first and second fingers of the right hand, the thumb being above and the two fingers below the card. Hold the pack in the left hand as if about to deal the cards, the card for which that first mentioned is to be changed being on the top. Bring the hands rapidly together, pushing the top card with the left thumb about an inch beyond the rest of the pack, and at the same moment place the card held in the right hand, with a sliding motion, upon the top of the pack. Both this card and the original top card, which is now second, will now be between the two fingers and thumb of the right hand. Press lightly on the top card with the left thumb to keep it back, and quickly draw away the right hand, pressing gently upwards with the two fingers on the face of the second card, which you will thereby draw away in place of the top card. If neatly done, the keenest eyesight cannot detect the substitution of the second card. Your only difficulty will be to find a colourable pretext for placing the card you hold on the top of the pack. This achieved, the rest is easy. The nature of the trick you are performing will frequently suggest a plausible excuse. A very successful plan is to boldly request the company to observe that you do not do that which you at the same moment actually do. "You will observe, ladies and gentlemen," you remark, "that I do not, even for one moment, replace the card in the pack, but simply," etc., etc. At the words "replace the card in the pack," the hands are brought together and make the change. The action, suiting the words, is taken by the audience as an indicative gesture only, and thus the change is effected under their very eyes, without exciting the least suspicion. In this mode of making the exchange, you should aim at being easy and natural, rather than very rapid. The main movement, that which brings the hands together, is undisguised, but attributed to a fictitious motive, and the subsidiary movement of the fingers, which actually effects the change, is so slight as to be practically imperceptible. Fourth method, with one hand only. Take the pack, face downwards, in the left hand, as if about to deal. Place the card to be changed at the top, and the card for which it is to be changed next below it. With the left thumb push forward the top card to the extent of half its width, letting it rest on the tips of the fingers. This will leave one half of the second card exposed. By the reverse movement of the thumb, draw back this second card till its outer edge is just clear of the inner edge of the top card. Now press the second card downwards with the thumb so as to bring its opposite edge just above the level of the top card, then push it back into its place, but this time above instead of below the top card. Fifth method, to change a given card without the aid of the pack. A card having been chosen and returned to the pack, make the pass to bring it to the top, and palm it. Give the pack to be shuffled, and when it is returned, pick out haphazard any card you please, and holding it up between the first finger and thumb of the right hand, in which is the palmed card, announce boldly that that was the card chosen. You will of course be contradicted, whereupon you pretend to be disconcerted, and ask if the person is quite certain that that is not the card he drew, and so on. Meanwhile, you take the card face downwards, between the first finger and thumb of the left hand, whence you immediately take it again in the right hand, taking it so as to bring the palmed card immediately over it, when the two will at a little distance appear to be only one card. You then say, "Well, if you seriously assure me that it is not the right card, I must endeavour to change it to the right one. May I ask what your card was?" When you are told, you continue, "It is a very simple process. I have merely to lay the card upon my hand, so, or if you prefer it, I will change it in your own hands. Oblige me by holding the card face downwards. I think you said your card was," say, the ace of spades. "Change." As you say the words, "lay the card upon my hand," you place the two cards for an instant on the palm of the left hand, and draw off rapidly the top card, which is the right one, leaving the other palmed in the left hand, which then drops to your side. The audience do not suspect that the change is already effected, or that you have more than one card in your hand throughout, and if you have performed the trick neatly, will be utterly nonplussed when the transformation is revealed. You may, if you please, conclude by asking what card the audience imagine that they first saw, and, when told, remarking that they must have been mistaken in their impression, as that card has been in Mr. So-and-so's tail pocket all evening, as you prove by plunging your left hand, in which the card remains palmed, into the pocket, and producing it accordingly. Sixth method, to change several cards at once. This sleight is extremely useful in cases where you desire, without the knowledge of the audience, to gain possession of a given number of selected cards. Palm in the left hand, face downwards, a number of cards equal to that which you desire to abstract. Take the cards which you desire to gain possession of between the second finger and thumb of the left hand, after the manner of the single card. Cover these cards lengthways with the right hand, and palm them in that hand, at the same moment seizing crossways, with the fingers and thumbs of the same hand, the cards already palmed in the left hand, which to the eyes of the spectators will be the same they have just seen, and throw them face downwards on the table. End of Section 3.